This book will bring much needed inspiration and hope to everyone who reads it.
But now the game was over. The house had won. I was going to die right here on this deserted street. A small item in the news. American tourist goes missing in Mexico.
Call now or visit mypillow.com to purchase What Are the Odds from Crack Addict to CEO. Enter the promo code and you'll receive free shipping. Mike will also include a free $25 MyPillow gift card. Mike shares his incredible story of addiction, divine intervention, and hope. In his new memoir, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, learn how Mike's 14 near-death experiences and heavy crack addiction led him from a place of total darkness into the light. Mike's personal stories of transformation remind us that with faith, all things are possible. Call now or visit mypillow.com to purchase What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. Enter the promo code and you'll receive free shipping. Mike will also include a free $25
Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, Editor-in-Chief of thenationalpulse.com. Today we're talking about big tech and big tech bias, but with a twist. We all know big tech bias is happening. We all see it happening. You hear the stories of the high-profile people, including the President of the United States, who are routinely censored by Twitter, Google, Facebook, and the rest. We know there are solutions out there, from repealing Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, or using alternative platforms like Parler, or even bringing antitrust suits against the monopolistic tech firms. But those things are all going to take a lot of time, and time is something we don't always have at our disposal. As of right now, there are 73 days until the US elections in November, and that's certainly not enough time to pursue legislative changes to ensure fairness at the polls, especially not with this Congress. The Democrats pretend to be concerned about election integrity, as long as it concerns their ways of getting people to vote for them, which happens to include a style of voting that is susceptible to major fraud, mail-in ballots. But they're not so concerned when massive monopolistic corporates weigh in on the side of a candidate in an election. And I don't just mean through political donations, as if that whole thing isn't bad enough. Social media firms are kicking conservatives off their platforms every day. We know this. But did you know it doesn't just stop at social media? Uber, Lyft, PayPal, Venmo, Medium, and others have all banned conservative activist Laura Loomer from their platforms. Laura has many enemies, and even some on the ostensible political right, who target Loomer for daring to speak her mind about a plethora of issues. The Federalist published an article stating, quote, "Loomer is not a representative Republican, nor an existential threat to the Republic worthy of melodramatic denouncements and undying news cycles, but she's a bad apple, and her ascent does underscore the real-life consequences of elite corruption." That's a trash argument and plays the ball and not the man or woman. It's lazy, but it does accomplish one thing. It does the left's job for them. Shame on right-wing news sites who attack Loomer but turn a blind eye to the Republican establishment that continues to leech off China's teat, or targets President Trump because they love globalism and Loomer and Trump do not. I get it. You might not like Laura Loomer, but that doesn't mean you have to endorse major corporates targeting her. We're talking ride-sharing apps, money transfer and payment apps, blogging websites, and of course, social media platforms. No Facebook, no Twitter, none of that for Laura Loomer. Why? Because she's dangerous, they say. I get it. She is dangerous. She's dangerous to the status quo, she's dangerous to the political elite, and she's even dangerous to the Republican establishment. On August the 18th, Loomer trounced the Republican establishment's candidates in the Florida 21st Congressional District primary. That also happens to be Donald Trump's voting district. So assuming President Trump casts a vote for his congressman on November the 3rd, he'll ostensibly be voting for Laura Loomer. Loomer beat Christian Acosta by nearly 20%. She carried that race despite being banned from social media and not having the ability to reach voters online. Think about that. During a global pandemic, where meeting voters or knocking on doors was almost impossible to do in person, they banned a conservative political candidate from social media and she still won. Incredible. Now Laura Loomer faces off against Democrat Lois Frankel, perhaps one of the most detestable people in politics in America. Frankel is a paid-up member of the political elite. She goes on long-paid junkets to foreign countries. She laughably claims that Michael Bloomberg, the effete and diminutive billionaire, is in touch with ordinary people. She's been trying to impeach Trump since 2016, and she's even been criticized by members of her own party for profiting off high healthcare prices, raising her own salary, and trying to change the West Palm Beach charter so she could run for a third term as mayor. Her own primary opponent said of Frankel, quote, "President Trump throws around the idea of extending term limits." He doesn't, he jokes about it. But Frankel actually attempted it, end quote. And Frankel's potential re-election in November, she's of course the favorite as the incumbent in a Democratic-leaning seat, that'll be marred by accusations of unfair play pertaining specifically to big tech. That's the view of the American Principles Project, as well as many others. On Thursday, yesterday, APP sent a letter to the Federal Election Commission, drawing attention to the fact that big tech allows Lois Frankel to use their platform to garner votes, but not for Laura Loomer. In fact, Twitter has already stood by their ban and de facto election interference, stating after Loomer's primary victory, quote, "The account owner you reference was permanently suspended for repeated violations of the Twitter rules, and we do not plan to reverse that enforcement action," end quote. Well, there you have it. They don't intend to reverse a ban for a congressional candidate, and they're giving Frankel a huge leg up, especially in an election where digital matters more than ever. Frankel has almost 60,000 followers across her social media, meaning her reach is in the high hundreds of thousands, if not more. Only 336,000 people voted in the 2016 election, and Frankel took around 211,000 of those votes. If a majority of her followers are potential voters or constituents, big tech is giving Frankel an assist to the tune of what would usually cost millions, and what will cost Loomer millions to reach those same people without social media. The APP letter is up on your screen now, and you can find it at AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. It asks if tech companies can legally grant a material benefit to one political candidate, and it asks if said preference should not be considered an in-kind contribution. I think it should be. Today we'll be speaking to the author of that letter, John Schweppe, and Laura Loomer, congressional candidate for Florida 21. They'll both be joining us on the program. Stick around for that. This is the National Pulse, where we watch the watchers, and we'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I guarantee you they'll be the most comfortable sheets you'll ever own.
With the Giza Dream Sheets, I'm getting the best sleep of my life.
They are so soft and smooth. I never slept so good.
I fall asleep faster because I'm actually comfortable.
I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable, which is why I can give you my full 10-year warranty. But I didn't stop there. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. I guarantee you the first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen right now. MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors and will be the softest, most comfortable sheets you will ever own. Use the promo code and get 2 for 1 low price, plus free shipping. Giza Dreams are made with the finest, most sought-after cotton in the world. Giza cotton was once reserved for only the finest dress shirts, but is now available in Mike's Giza Dream Sheets. They feature a beautiful silky sateen weave that helps keep you cool and comfortable all night long.
With the Giza Dream Sheets, I'm getting the best rest of my life.
I love my Giza Dream Sheets.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. Use the promo code and Mike will give you a very special 2 for 1 low price and free shipping. That's right, get 2 for 1 low price and free shipping. Call or go online now.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Welcome back to the National Pulse. Grateful to have you all watching, whether you're watching live or watching on repeat. We appreciate you being a part of this show and a part of the National Pulse. Make sure you bookmark thenationalpulse.com. And if you like our work, it's thenationalpulse.com/support. I'm Raheem Kassam, the editor-in-chief of the National Pulse, and I'm really delighted to welcome to our third show a good friend of mine who is the Director of Government Affairs at the American Principles Project. John Schweppe joins us in studio now. John, thank you so much for joining us on the program
Thanks
today.
For having me.
You wrote this, I think it's quite a scathing letter. I mean, it's not scathing at anyone in particular. Maybe it's at the social media companies. It's not an aggressive letter, but it's pretty firm in what it's asserting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the letter contains? We're going to put it up on the screen, what the letter contains, and why did you write it? What's this got to do with you? What's this got to do with APP?
Sure. Well, APP has been very much at the forefront of battling big tech bias and looking at legislative and law solutions to fix it. But with this, we've been researching for a couple of months, when big tech actually censors political candidates, what does that mean? Because ultimately, in the case of the Florida 21st Congressional District, we're talking about one candidate getting a monetary benefit from access to all of these followers, the ability to advertise, free advertisement, organic, but it's still advertisement. And then the other is being completely precluded from this. So we looked into it, and what we found is that, under campaign finance law, which there's a lot of issues with campaign finance law in this country. I'm not saying it's perfect or that we should, but we should adhere to it if it's the law. And our campaign finance law basically says corporations aren't allowed to do this. They're not allowed to give contributions directly to candidates. That's what this in effect is. And so our letter to the FEC was basically looking for clarification and kind of trying to figure out, how are you guys going to adjudicate this going forward?
What do you say to critics who say big tech companies are private companies and they don't have to let anybody on their platforms?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. The issue is this with big tech, two issues really. Number one, we're talking about an unprecedented concentration of power, unlike anything we've ever seen in the Western world, where these 4, 5, 6 companies their market caps are north of $7 trillion. I mean, they have so much power. And the second problem is that progressive elites are running these companies and are willing to exert that power to get what they want politically. And that's what we've seen, especially since President Trump was elected. These companies want to censor thoughts that they don't like. They want to rig the election to help Democrats in any way they can. Google especially, not as relevant with the Florida 21st race, but we see Google tampering their search. Wall Street Journal has reported that repeatedly. I mean, they're absolutely trying to rig this thing. And so as conservatives, our natural instinct is let's protect property rights. Let's not have government regulation. But we also have to recognize that this is a grave threat, not just to the election in 2020, but really to the health of our republic itself.
You follow this issue incredibly closely. I would say you're one of the people in the world that probably follows it closer than I do, because I'm obsessed by this, being on the receiving end of so many Twitter bans and Facebook bans myself. my Facebook page is still in limbo. I wrote to Facebook themselves. They wrote me back. They explained the situation. You were in violation of, and then they give you a vague thing, and they don't tell you how to rectify it. And in fact, my Facebook page now, at Raheem Kassam, it comes up with a little warning for me. Mm-hmm. You may not invite your friends. I'm effectively in detention. I'm in the sin bin. I'm on the naughty step. I can't even invite my friends to like my public page, and they say my page is at risk from being deleted, but they don't say if that is imminent or if there is another violation. There needs to be another violation for that to happen. And further to that, they say you cannot undo where you are right now, which is a new thing that I hadn't heard of until last month. So it's really getting, as we get closer and closer to this election, it's really getting more and more authoritarian from these big companies. The American Principles Project is a right-wing, center-right think tank. I wanted to ask you, have you had any joy in getting any advocacy groups from the left to join to your cause?
So the issue with the left, speaking specifically to Section 230, there's people on both sides that want to get rid of it, but the motives are totally different. So on the right, people who want to change 230, it's more about we want to have free speech and free expression online. Simple. But for the left, they want complete control. So what they want to be able to do is, if you're saying something that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez deems to be untrue, they want to be able to ban you using the force of government. So right now, these platforms are actually under a lot of pressure from the left because they don't want to be regulated by them either. And so that's, I think, a big part of why they're doing what they're doing with the election coming up. They're trying to show the left, look, we're being good little boys and girls. We're doing what we can to help rig this election for you guys. Please leave us alone. And it's kind of this unspoken agreement that may materialize if Biden is elected. We've
got about 2 minutes here until the break, but there's probably a lot of people out there who are watching this don't know what you mean when you say 230.
Of course.
Can you just give us a little 90-second primer on 230?
Section 230 was a special subsidy that was included as part of a bill in the 1990s to insulate companies, to make it where content that's posted by a user is they're the only people responsible for it. That Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, aren't responsible for it. It's amounted to giving these companies these huge valuations. I mean, it basically immunizes them from lawsuits. What we want to do is say, if you're going to get this special subsidy from the federal government, no other industry enjoys that. If you're going to get that, you need to jump through a couple hoops. The hoops being adhere to free speech, adhere to free expression. So that's our position on it.
Even the media doesn't have that protection. Journalists don't have that protection, but big tech firms do have that protection.
Right, and we wonder why they're the largest companies in the world. I mean, it's a huge benefit. And look, the legal system, people are worried about frivolous lawsuits, but it really is a populist system. It gives us the ability to seek a redress for our grievances. And sometimes corporations, I know my libertarian friends think corporations can do no wrong, that they're just private companies, but private companies can also oppress the rights of others. And when they do, we need to have a way to redress that.
Especially when those private companies are effectively subsidized by government and by legislation. We'll talk about that after the break. I want to come back with John Schweppe, Director of the Government Affairs side of the American Principles Project. You can get all their work at AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. Full disclosure, the National Pulse is actually affiliated with the American Principles Project, and I am an employee of the American Principles Project, and we will be having lots of American Principles Project experts on this show as a result of that. It really is an amazing organization, and if you can support it, go to the American Principles Project website and donate and get involved with all of that. Now they do work in the big tech sphere. They're also doing work on transgender in sports issues, which is something that the ACLU will talk about, but I've yet to see from the ACLU any mention of Laura Loomer, this race in Florida 21st. We'll get back to that with John Schweppe, Raheem Kassam at the National Pulse. Make sure you're heading over to the National Pulse on Twitter. Really stuff it up them. They won't like us on there, but also on Parler, the alternative app to Twitter. We'll be right back in just a second.
Stay tuned to get a free pan from Granite Stone. Stuck on eggs, burnt on batter. You can scrub and scrape, but you can't escape the nightmare of your sticky pans. Introducing the Granite Stone Pan, the all-new durable non-stick pan. No butter or oil needed. Watch, we melted down these sticky candies in Granite Stone, and it just doesn't stick. We cooked a half a dozen eggs, bacon, cheese, and tomato breakfast with no butter or oil, and it just doesn't stick. Look, caramels, chocolate, and cheese. Unreal for any other pan, but not for Granite Stone. It just doesn't stick. Granite Stone will be the last pan you'll ever need because it's pressed from a solid aluminum disc for even heat conduction, then coated 3 times with our durable Granite Stone finish. Granite Stone is metal utensil safe and won't scratch. And talk about non-stick. This salmon cooked skin side down with no added butter or oil just doesn't stick. This steak is perfectly seared just like the pros. And because Granite Stone is oven rated to 500 degrees, we bake this upside down pan pizza to perfection, and it just doesn't stick. Fire Flambe Delicious Cherries Jubilee. Plus, it's PFOA free and 100% dishwasher safe. Call or go online to get your Granite Stone pan for the special TV discount price of just $19.99. Granite Stone is so durable it comes with a 10-year warranty. And with every order, you're going to get a Granite Stone single-serve egg pan absolutely free. It's the perfect size for personalized eggs, omelets, or frittatas that slide right out. It makes the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich quick. Yours absolutely free. We'll even ship your entire order free. That's right, free shipping. You get it all, an incredible value. Here's how to order.
To order, call 1-800-850-0237. That's 1-800-850-0237, or order online at buygranitestone.com. That's 1-800-850-0237. Call now.
Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're very grateful for you being here, and even more grateful for your shares. While big tech is trying to censor us, is the best time to be sharing National Pulse links as far and wide. And if you remember from our first show, the fact checkers for Facebook, also linked with the Chinese Communist Party, by the way, are always trying to suppress National Pulse content. So make sure you go that extra effort to share it with your friends and family in your email, etc., etc. And we thank you for it. Our guest for this segment, as in the last, is John Schweppe, the Director of Government Affairs at the American Principles Project. John, I wanted to get to a couple of other things with you on this big tech bias issue. Obviously, this always comes up when there's somebody of high profile that's getting suppressed or something unfair is happening, and I go on the television and talk about it and people rush to my aid, but it's actually happening to ordinary Americans who don't have that voice and who can't remonstrate against big tech in the same way that we can. We kick up a stink and the president's son will tweet about me being banned and things like that, but not everybody has that recourse. And so I'm almost less concerned about myself and more concerned about the scale of this that is happening to ordinary people up and down the country. Do you have any perspective on that?
No, that's absolutely right. That's why we have to do something on this eventually. And as you brought up in your monologue, we are running out of time for a legislative solution now. But long term, we really need to look at this in terms of giving people a way to redress their grievances in the immediate. We can't just have, if you have a blue check mark or you have 500,000 followers, that you get to have your stuff fixed. There's lots of people who are budding entrepreneurs who are starting a podcast or, whatever, and then all of a sudden they learn from YouTube, Google, that they're demonetized and their whole ability to actually be successful in that is taken away from them. So, this is something long-term I think we really need to focus on, and really it's about helping the small people. I want to help you too, Raheem, but ultimately you'll the small people. Yeah, exactly.
Look, I want to ask you, the White House executive order on big tech and the Republican Party platform, are we getting enough out of our own side on this?
A lot of work to do still. The president's executive order was just fantastic in terms of understanding the urgency of the situation and really trying to do something. We do long-term need a legislative solution, which is sticky.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in here, but I want the audience to understand that an executive order doesn't make it so. Right.
It's the interpretation of the administration, which is really useful while he's in power, but we do need a long-term solution. But that being said, what he did was he used his bully pulpit, and he's very good at this. This is one of the best things he's done as president, to really kind of push Congress in the right direction. Before he did that, we were really looking at Josh Hawley, and that might be it. in terms of who is fighting big tech in Congress. That's shifting now, and we have lots of senators. Kelly Loeffler has introduced legislation, Tom Cotton. A lot of these guys are coming out and saying this is a serious issue, and I'm confident that if we are able to deliver, give the president a second term, and keep a Republican Senate, we actually will be able to get viable legislation at least to a vote. That's my hope for next year.
I wasn't very impressed when I saw these tech CEOs come to Capitol Hill. I wasn't particularly impressed with the questions they were asked. I didn't feel like maybe there was one or two people who sort of really tried to stick the knife in. But on a broad basis, I wasn't too impressed by the performance of the representatives in this country on that. Would have liked to have seen far more, especially as regards something like antitrust, because as anybody who's read The Art of the Deal knows, that in order to have a successful negotiation, you have to adopt a very extreme position, just like the other side are adopting an extreme position. I mean, it's pretty extreme to be keeping congressional conservative candidates off social media platforms, to ban ordinary people from using all these apps, ride-sharing apps, all that kind of thing. It's pretty extreme to be targeting the supporters of the President of the United States, but our position never seems to be extreme in return, and that's why we don't get the compromise. Antitrust seems to me as one of those places that we can go and explore, and really, if we need to do it, should do it, but it's a great starting negotiating position, is it not?
Absolutely. That's very astute, because what's happening right now, as I mentioned, the left is very threatening, and the big tech companies are absolutely worried about them actually doing something. They don't really have that fear of the right yet. I mean, I think it's starting to grow, but they're pretty confident that the organizations they've given contributions to will do their work to make sure that that doesn't happen. But as you mentioned with antitrust, it is important. These are incredibly large, corporations. This is unprecedented level of power. There is sincere consumer harm being done, which is, kind of the metric that's needed to do antitrust. And I think that it's something that hopefully Republicans will take seriously going forward, because if we don't take it seriously, they're never going to listen to us. They're never going to pay attention. Complaining on Twitter is not a policy prescription.
As much as I do it. John, just before we let you go, there's a couple of minutes left here. I want to ask you about the alternatives out there, if that makes an impact. A lot of establishment Republicans say things like, well, if you don't like Twitter's terms of service, why don't you start your own Twitter? But people have started their own Twitter. There's Parler, for instance, which I know has got a lot of traction in recent months. And that's somewhere where Laura Loomer is allowed to be and is allowed to message other people. Is that a long-term solution?
I don't think so. I think it's great that these companies are forming and that entrepreneurs are trying to do this. But the reality is there's this thing called network effects, and it's that people go where other people are. And ultimately, we don't really want to segregate ourselves and be in our little ghettos. We want to be able to reach everyone. And so, we have the public square. Parler isn't the public square yet. Not really. Most people in America haven't heard of Parler. Google, Facebook, Twitter, these are the public squares. This is where we have to be allowed to speak and be heard.
All right, well, we'll be speaking with Laura Loomer in the coming segments here, and so I want to put the points you've made to her and make sure that we're hearing her side of the story down there in Florida's 21st as well. But just before we let you go, I want you to let everybody know you're an incredibly smart man. You look at this stuff every day. Where can they follow you? How do they follow you? Are you on Parler, for instance?
I am on Parler. I'm on Twitter. My handle is John Schweppe. And I think you have the spelling on screen. That's pretty tough.
Yeah, that's right. We got that. I want to make sure everybody follows John Schweppe, that everybody's following the American Principles Project, that everybody's following the National Pulse across all the different platforms, whether they're free speech platforms, whether they're the establishment media platforms. It doesn't matter. Right now, while we can reach people, while we can still reach people, it is the most urgent time to do so. So for everybody out there, make sure you're doing it. In the coming segments, we'll talk to Natalie Winters about what we've heard from John Schweppe here, as well as the big tech links to the Chinese Communist Party. And then we'll bring on Laura Loomer, the congressional candidate, after that epic primary win just earlier this week on the, I'm sure she's on the crest of a wave right now. Laura Loomer will be, I think, putting everything she's got into defeating Lois Frankel, and we'll ask her what that means in just a moment. This is the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam. We'll be back in just a second.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback. Jerry Rice, legendary wide receiver.
You ready for your weekly meeting?
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's do this. Let's stack the deck.
When legends play, they wear Copperfit Advanced Back Pro. Copperfit's best-selling compression back support just got better with new double-band adjustable supports for customizable compression when you need it most.
Since I put this on, I feel so much better. The core is the most important thing. To know that I'm stabilized here. Whatever I'm doing, I can give it 100%.
4 built-in stabilizing supports designed to improve posture and help reduce lower back stress and strain.
You have back pain and it's affecting your everyday life. You do something.
If you can find something to help you get back out and be active like Copperfit, go for it.
Absolutely.
Do not give up. A high-performance compression fabric infused with the powerful properties of copper, 360-degree flexible mobility, and lightweight, durable construction.
Nothing more painful than having back pains. If you're aching, if you feel like you can't work out anymore, you can. And that's with Copperfit.
Yeah. It's for all of us who still want to be active, still want to compete.
Way to go. That's what I'm talking about. Man, this really does feel good. It feels to me like the fountain of youth.
Copperfit's best-selling back support just got bigger, badder, and better. Or call 1-800-944-5851. Or on the web at advancedbackpro.com. Get yours now for only $19.99.
This does feel good.
That's what I've been saying.
You think it was fair?
It was fun.
Play for the love of the game.
Copperfit, live limitless.
Welcome back to the National Pulse. If you're wondering why I've got a pink tie and flowery pocket square on, it's because immediately after the show today I am heading to my girlfriend's brother's wedding, so I thought I'd dress sort of in wedding attire. So I just wanted to wish them a happy wedding, I guess, and congratulations. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I've got Natalie Winters in the hot seat, senior reporter at the National Pulse, joining me here in studio. Today we're talking about big tech and big tech bias, but you know a lot more about big tech than just what they do to domestic elections here in the United States. You know about how they are linked overseas, who sits on their boards. Specifically, Facebook really gets to me as well, but you know a little bit about the Twitter stuff too, or a lot about it, but there's certainly some little nuggets that are especially interesting. That Facebook board, whatever they call it.
The oversight board.
The oversight board. I mean, tell us about Facebook's oversight board, who Twitter has on their board. Just take it away. They like you better than me.
Well, Facebook's oversight board is overwhelmingly comprised of far left, very, very far left, radical activists, some people who've tweeted about getting President Trump removed from Twitter, a host of George Soros-linked individuals who even testified in President Trump's impeachment hearings. And again, this is the oversight board, the only body at Facebook which has the power to override the, as we know, already far left anti-Trump employees and leadership at the company. But what's also interesting about the leadership at Facebook, specifically a high-level executive who's a vice president at the company, she's actually been, Lori Gohler is her name, and she's actually been a visiting fellow at Tsinghua University's School of, quote, Marxist journalism. And that is a direct quote from the university's website, and that this program, which is entirely bankrolled by the Chinese Communist Party and seeks to train journalists that write stories in accordance with the Chinese Communist Party's perception and really weaponization of journalism. But she was a visiting fellow there in 2017 and lectured at this school.
Extraordinary, and it's so important that people understand it, because when you look at why big tech is intervening in this election, so big tech themselves, between Google, and they've said this when President Trump was elected, they said they didn't think they did enough to stop that from happening, right? And then you see that they've been working with China, developing a search engine for the Chinese Communist Party, other companies doing this, the Microsoft operating system that was developed for the Chinese Communist Party explicitly. And then you see all of these things come together, and that's what what you look for, right? You look for where all this stuff dovetails between the left and, I think it was it Peter Navarro who said this the other day about the dovetailing of the DNC and the CCP in an interview as well. And it's an incredibly astute, thing to notice, because it still does to most people fly under the radar. There's no reason for them to connect those dots in their minds, but it's very clearly happening. It's not one of these crazy conspiracy theories. You know why? Because you go to the big tech companies' own websites and it's on there, right in your face, on their boards, right? These people sit on their boards. I just wanted to ask you a follow-up to something you mentioned as well. You said somebody on the Facebook Oversight Board testified in President Trump's impeachment hearings. Was that for or against President Trump?
Certainly against.
Yeah, okay.
But it's interesting, too, when you bring up the DNC, because it seems that the unofficial motto of the Democratic Party for this election season is preserving free and fair elections, yet they overlook the malign influence of big tech routinely. And what's also interesting is there was a recent Pew poll that came out, and it showed that nearly 75% of Americans have identified big tech as willing to censor content that is political for political reasons, because they disagree with it. But what's more interesting is the stark partisan divide in the levels of confidence and trust in these entities to censor. I believe it was over 3 times the amount of Democrats as opposed to conservatives trusting entities like Google, like Facebook, to censor content related to the election, you name it. But what's more interesting, and you were talking about antitrust investigations, and there was a piece that we recently had up at the site about Kamala Harris saying, quote, "I am a radical." But the buried lead of that story was that those comments were made at Google less than 3 weeks after a Texas Attorney General's office had launched an antitrust investigation into that company. And interestingly enough, when she was asked about where antitrust and where regulation should go of the tech industry, she cautioned against further regulations being pursued against Google as, quote, short-sighted, and saying that, quote, we have to allow these businesses to develop and grow. And again, this concept of election interference occurring on technology platforms is especially concerning given their routine liaising with the Chinese Communist Party, who has, again, insisted that Joe Biden wins the presidency.
Now, Laura Loomer has a particularly interesting case and a particularly interesting race coming up. They told me that she couldn't win the primary. I was told that at the outset a couple of months back when we started covering the race on the National Pulse website and really looking into what was going on down there. She absolutely trounced her Republican establishment opponents there. So what interests you about this? What interests you about the Florida 21 Congressional District? We know Lois Frankel, one of the most reprehensible members of Congress out there. What are you looking for here?
Well, it seems that the call, oh, they're not going to win, they don't have a chance, whether it's President Trump, Laura Loomer, seems to almost be a surefire tell that you are indeed going to win, especially when these candidates are up against their more establishment counterparts. So it's really encouraging to see candidates like Laura Loomer winning their primaries. And again, imagine by how much more of a margin she would have won had she had access to platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Google. But something tells me she does not need it. She is a fighter. And who knows, I think that she has a very genuine chance and a very good chance to win.
Well, thank you, Natalie Winter, senior reporter at the National Pulse. Why don't you tell the audience where they can follow you?
My Twitter handle is Natalie G. Winters.
And Parler?
I do not have a parlor.
We've got to get you on Parler. Look at that, slacking over here. All right, we'll be back. We'll be joined by Laura Loomer, the congressional candidate for the Republican Party in Donald Trump's voting district. That's the Mar-a-Lago district. I've been to Mar-a-Lago once. Pretty nice. Pretty good fried chicken, actually, funnily enough. You wouldn't have expected that at Mar-a-Lago. But it was good. And we'll be talking to Laura Loomer, probably not about the fried chicken, but about a lot of other things here on the show. Specifically, we'll get into the fact that she is a Marmite candidate. For those of you who know what Marmite is, it is a yeast spread in England that's very popular for breakfast, but people either love it or hate it. And I think Laura Loomer would probably embrace the fact that she may be the Marmite candidate down there in Florida's 21st. So we'll put all of these questions about big tech bias and how she's going to beat Lois Frankel in November to Laura Loomer after this break at the National Pulse, on Parler at the Nat Pulse, on Twitter. We'll be right back.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback. Jerry Rice, legendary wide receiver.
You ready for your weekly beating?
Yeah.
We're ready.
Let's do this. Let's stack the deck.
When legends play, they wear CopperFit Advanced Back Pro. CopperFit's best-selling compression back support just got better with new double-band adjustable supports for customizable compression when you need it most.
Since I put this on, I feel so much better. The core is the most important thing. To know that I'm stabilized here. Whatever I'm doing, I can give it 100%.
4 built-in stabilizing supports designed to improve posture and help reduce lower back stress and strain.
You have back pain and it's affecting your everyday life. You do something.
If you can find something to help you get back out and be active like CopperFit, go for it.
Absolutely.
Do not give up. A high-performance compression fabric infused with the powerful properties of copper, 360-degree flexible mobility, and lightweight, durable construction.
Nothing more painful than having back pains. If you're aching, if you feel like you can't work out anymore, you can. And that's with CopperFit.
Yeah. It's for all of us who still want to be active, still want to compete.
Way to go. That's what I'm talking about. Man, this really does feel good. It feels to me like the fountain of youth.
CopperFit's best-selling back support just got bigger, badder, and better. Or call 1-800-944-5851. Or on the web at advancedbackpro.com. Get yours now for only $19.99.
This does feel good.
That's what I've been saying.
You think it was fair?
It was fun.
Play for the love of the game.
CopperFit, live limitless.
Well, welcome back to the National Pulse with me, Raheem Kassam, the editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. If you have a spare moment, head on over to that website, sign up to the email list. We send no spam, but we do give a roundup of our news stories, which are mostly exclusives and investigations every single day. And if it's not a news story investigation, it's a profile piece. And one of the profile pieces we did several months back when I was told that I'm crazy for ostensibly supporting Laura Loomer and at least drawing attention to what Laura Loomer was doing down there in Florida's 21st Congressional District. We wrote the piece and ran the piece anyway, and of course it went great guns. A lot of people read that, thousands upon thousands of people who've seen it across the National Pulse site. But they don't need the National Pulse to know who Laura Loomer is. She stands on her own merit. You may have heard of her over the last couple of years as this firebrand conservative activist who hasn't been afraid to take on big tech, to take on Nancy Pelosi. I've known her for nearly a decade now, I think, and she's just a remarkable human being. Laura Loomer joins us on the program now, and I think, Laura, the first thing and the only thing I can say to start this off with is congratulations. You did it.
Yes, we did. I did it. And thank you so much, Raheem. And I just have to acknowledge for people watching that you were one of the few conservatives who actually remained loyal to me. And when people were saying that I was too toxic or that you don't want to tweet about her, you're going to lose your accounts, you always tweeted in support of me and you always defended me and you always stood by me in my race. And for that, I really appreciate your loyalty. And you were right. And now everybody sees that you and some of the others who decided to stick their necks out and support me and support my candidacy were right. I won by double digits. It wasn't even close. I won 43% of the vote in a race with 6 Republican candidates, and I was the only candidate in the nation who is deplatformed and denied access. And look, the radical left and my opponents took out every measure possible to try to interfere in my race. And it wasn't even just big tech. It was the telecommunications company and it was the local media. Comcast Xfinity banned me 2 days or 3 days before, 72 hours out from my election, shutting down my ability to send text messages and emails to people who have Comcast Xfinity. We're talking about unprecedented election tampering, criminal racketeering by these companies that are supposed to be providing equal access to all. Then CBS News falsely reported 2 days before the election that I had lost the primary and that I only received 2% of the vote in an extreme illegal act of voter suppression. suppression. And of course, this barely received any media attention because the left has falsely portrayed me as some type of neo-Nazi white supremacist, even though I'm a Zionist Jewish woman, and so they've made it so that even a lot of Republican media establishments won't come to my defense. But we won despite all odds.
It's not just that they, and congratulations, it's not just that they won't come to your defense, but some openly attack you. I read in my opening monologue this quote from some writer at The Federalist, which was just doing the left's work for them, doing Lois Frankel's work for them. I couldn't believe it. Usually The Federalist is quite a good and reliable and enjoyable conservative website, but I guess we can't all be perfect all the time. Laura, you come under so much fire from so many places, from so many people. I'm not going to ask you how you deal with it. I know how you deal with it in the very same way that we deal with it over here at the National Pulse and at the War Room. But what I want to give to people is an understanding of who you are, what you stand for, what your platform is, because there are so many lies out there about you. Why don't you clarify for us who you are and what you believe?
Well, I'm 27 years old. I'm an investigative journalist. I got my career started working undercover with Project Veritas. I was undercover in the Hillary Clinton campaign, exposing fraud and corruption. And I did a lot of very powerful investigations that were even mentioned by then candidate Trump during the presidential debates that really ultimately swayed the election and delivered Hillary Clinton and the Democrats one of the biggest October surprises in U.S. history. After I left Project Veritas, where I worked for 3 years, I started my own media company called Illuminate Media. And I became very famous by organically building my own following of millions of people online by inventing something called loomering, or getting loomered. And I would conduct these surprise ambush interviews of high-profile Democrats and leftist activists on camera and ask them the questions that the mainstream media should have been asking them, but didn't have the courage or the balls to do themselves. So I showed up to Hillary Clinton's book signing and asked her about Benghazi and her emails, and she had me thrown out. I put illegal aliens on Nancy Pelosi's lawn when the Democrats were refusing to give President Trump funding for the wall, and resulting in the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. I confronted James Comey about illegally briefing the president of the United States on a dossier that we now know was funded by the Clinton campaign itself. I single-handedly took down the Women's March, right? I was the first journalist in the country to expose Ilhan Omar and confront her and Rashida Tlaib out for being tied to terrorists, marrying her brother, hating Jews, and ultimately, working with ISIS ISIS-tied organizations to undermine and subvert our country and threaten our national security. And for all of that, I was called an Islamophobe, a racist, a white supremacist, even though I consider myself to be a human rights activist. And I believe in our American values, the United States Constitution, and Judeo-Christian principles. And simply because I took a very hardline stance against Islamification and Sharia law, I was completely demonized and attacked, and big tech decided to partner with actual Islamic terrorist organizations. And the Wall Street Journal broke a big story last year about how CARE privately conducted a lobby effort with big tech to get me banned and deplatformed, to the point of which I am now the most banned woman in the world. I am literally banned on every single social media site, and it's gone so far and it is so draconian that even Chase Bank shut me down. There was a big scandal with Chase banning very high-profile Trumpian activists, including myself, and even Project Veritas caught these Chase employees on camera saying that they were ordered to not give people who lacked moral character access to their banking. And so my bank account was shut down by Chase. I'm banned on Venmo, PayPal, GoFundMe.
Laura, we've got a break here. Laura, we've got a break here, but I want you to hang over, come back and join us for the next segment, because I want to hear more about this. I want to hear your thoughts on this FEC letter that the American Principles Project sent. I want to ask you if you'll be making a formal complaint to the FEC as well about all of this. And just to remember as well, I was awarded by an Iranian think tank the Islamophobe of the Year award. So I'm in competition with you on that one. I'm sure Media Matters and Right Wing Watch and all those people are watching this segment and their heads are blowing up seeing two noted Islamophobes on a show together themselves. Oh, and I wrote that book in 2017, No-Go Zones, how Sharia law is coming to a neighborhood near you. So we're on the same page on that, Laura. We'll be back with you in just a moment on the National Pulse with me, Raheem Kassam. Our guest, Laura Loomer, Florida 21 Congressional candidate. We'll be back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. You know me as the My Pillow guy, but what you might not know is my story. I've spent years writing my memoir, and it's finally done. Before this terrible pandemic came upon us, I had already wrote, I dedicate this book to anyone looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. And I've always used mathematics to prove that God exists. In our lives, we've had things happen that are 1 in a million or 1 in a billion, or we might say that's impossible. Well, when do we say it all has to be a miracle? My life has been like living inside of a movie, and in my book, I have pictures that are going to validate everything that you're going to read. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible.
Mike spent the last 7 years writing his book to share his life story. In this difficult time we are in, Mike's book will bring much needed inspiration and hope to everyone who reads it.
But now the game was over. The house had won. I was going to die right here on this deserted street, a small item in the news. American tourist goes missing in Mexico.
Call now or visit MyPillow.com to purchase What Are the Odds from Crack Addict to CEO. Enter the promo code and you'll receive free shipping. Mike will also include a free $25 MyPillow gift card. Mike shares his incredible story of addiction, divine intervention, and hope. In his new memoir, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, learn how Mike's 14 near-death experiences and heavy crack addiction led him from a place of total darkness into the light. Mike's personal stories of transformation remind us that with faith, all things are possible. Call now or visit MyPillow.com to purchase What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. Enter the promo code and you'll receive free shipping. Mike will also include a free $25 MyPillow gift card.
Well, where does the time go? We're just warming up here on the National Pulse show this week, but the hour goes so quickly. Maybe we can convince AVN to give us 2 or 3 or 4 hours here at the National Pulse. Just so many great guests, so much to talk about. One of those great guests here today joining us is Laura Loomer, the newly minted Republican candidate in Donald Trump's voting district, the Mar-a-Lago district, Florida 21. Laura, thank you for being on the show. I assume that when President Trump casts his vote, whenever he casts it, he'll be voting for you.
Yeah, look, he already sent in a vote by mail, or an absentee ballot, rather, several days ago, and I was one of the candidates on, so perhaps that should be a question during one of the White House press briefings. You know, they should maybe ask President Trump who he voted for in the primary. But yes, when I win in November, President Trump and Mrs. Trump will be 2 of my constituents, along with people like Rush Limbaugh as well. There's a lot of very prominent conservatives in this 21st district here in Florida. So it's an honor to have received the nomination. And I know that the National Review has said that there's no way in hell that I'm going to win, but I'm pretty sure I remember them saying the same thing about Donald Trump in 2016. So.
Right, and they campaigned actively against it. Laura, that's one of my questions for you is what is it going to take to win? Because we talked to John Schweppe from the American Principles Project. They've sent this letter to the Federal Elections Commission. I know you're very happy and grateful for that work in your favor. I want to ask you, number one, will you be sending your own letter, putting in your own complaint about this? And number two, how do you campaign in a pandemic, if not digitally? Is it going to cost you twice as much as it's going to cost Lois Frankel to campaign in that race?
Yes, well, look, while I'm very grateful to John Schweppe and his letter, you know, I've already filed my own complaint with the FEC for illegal in-kind contributions with my opponent for Twitter giving her access and not giving me access. But the issue is that these FEC complaints are not going to go anywhere because there is not a full functioning quorum at the FEC right now. And so none of the FEC complaints are being processed or dealt with because they don't have a quorum to address them. So really what this requires is the DOJ to act. And I have actually had my FEC attorney, Charlie Spies, reach out to the DOJ. Congressman Paul Gosar has reached out to the DOJ, and it's time for them to act because I have now, and this is one of the things that people said was impossible. They said she cannot win. She cannot win. It's not possible. You cannot win without social media. I have now presented on a silver platter for the DOJ a perfect case for criminal prosecution for perjury on behalf of the big tech CEO, the tech giants and the tech tyrants. Because I remember when Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and Sheryl Sandberg and Sundar Pichai testified in front of Congress under oath, and they said that they do not censor people on the basis of their political affiliation. And I also remember when Mark Zuckerberg gave a speech at Georgetown, and he said that he doesn't censor political speech, which is why he wouldn't be shutting down President Trump's account. But clearly they do, because yesterday Facebook and Twitter executives reached out to various publications, and Politico was first to break the story, followed up by the Washington Times, who reported that both companies have said that they will not be giving me access to an account. So I am the only candidate in the nation who will not have equal access. But meanwhile, ISIS, the KKK, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and pedophiles are all actively using Twitter and Facebook. And so you can find child pornography, you can get recruited for ISIS. Hell, Facebook will even auto-generate an advertisement and a recruitment video for you if you are a member of ISIS. This is an actual whistleblower report that was formally filed last year. And so Facebook says that I'm too dangerous, but they are actively generating advertisements in favor of a brutal Islamic terrorist organization. And so, this is a huge problem. It's election interference. And quite frankly, I do believe that these executives need to face prison time for committing perjury. You saw how they tried to destroy the lives of people like Roger Stone for supposedly lying to Congress. But these executives are guilty of lying to Congress. And I believe, and I agree with Nancy Pelosi when she says that nobody is above the law. And that includes the big tech tyrants in Silicon Valley. And, they're not above the law, and they need to be locked up for their crimes. They are effectively committing election tampering and interference. And we know how much the Democrats hate election interference. And so,
Laura, I just want to make sure we get this in because we've only got 3 minutes left here. I want to understand from you what it's going to take to win your election. I happen to believe that you're going to have to spend double what Lois Frankel is going to spend. Tell us about your fundraising efforts. You are out fundraising her. You are even out polling her in some internal polls as well. So just tell us a little bit more about that. And then I want you to tell the audience how they can support your effort.
Yeah, well, this is a grassroots campaign. And so it's going to be up to American patriots like me and others to contribute small dollar donations or max contributions if they can to send me over the finish line to Washington in November. And I've already raised close to $1.3 million, but I've had to spend majority of that because I'm deplatformed. And when you don't have equal access to fundraise on social media, which is a free fundraising tool for every other candidate in the nation besides me, you have to spend money on renting email lists, doing email prospecting, text message campaigns. And so I need everybody listening to donate. And $1, $5, $10, $20, $100, or the max of $5,600 or $2,800, anything helps because I need to get to Washington to hold these people accountable. I need to take on big tech because, a lot of the Republicans in Congress right now who are saying that they're actually secretly being paid off by big tech. And we saw this with the last hearing and these leaked memos that were exposed. And so if you want somebody who's going to take on the squad head on, and you want somebody who's going to give it back to the Democrats and absolutely obliterate big tech, then please contribute. You can follow me on Parler and Gab. That's all I have access to because I'm banned everywhere else. And so I would encourage you to get on Parler and delete your Twitter accounts, delete your Facebook accounts, because as a conservative, you are paying for your abuser to continue oppressing you. And they're making money off of you staying on their sites. And so I would encourage people to Twex it. I would disagree.
We've got 1 minute left here, Laura. Give us your domain, give us your URL as well, where people can go, the website.
It's just at Laura Loomer, and you can donate to my campaign by visiting lauraloomerforcongress.com. That's lauraloomerforcongress.com, and I really appreciate your support.
Yep. Thank you, Laura. Laura Loomer, Florida 21st Congressional District, the Mar-a-Lago District candidate. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the National Pulse. Always a pleasure, never a chore. We won't be here this weekend, of course. I like my weekend, but we'll be back on Monday at 3 p.m. I want you all to go back. If you missed yesterday's interview with Nigel Farage, go back. Make sure you're sharing that. Make sure you're sharing with as many people as humanly possible. There were some bombshells or some news we broke in that interview, specifically as it pertains to the mail-in ballots and how that's all going to go. We'll be back with more National Pulse next week. We'll see you then. From Natalie Winters, from myself, from John Schweppe, from Laura Loomer. Thank you so much for tuning in today. See you next week.
I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I guarantee you they'll be the most comfortable sheets you'll ever own.
With the Giza Dream Sheets, I'm getting the best sleep of my life.
They are so soft and smooth. I never slept so good.
I fall asleep faster because I'm actually comfortable.
I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean